Welcome, guys, to the Real G podcast. I am your host, Gigi Mata, and I have a guest here, Jason LeDuc. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Oh, there's so much to tell. So I spent 20 years in the Air Force. That was what I always wanted to do growing up. So I was in the Air Force and went all around the world doing cool things I can't tell people I did, and flew in the back of airplanes and did engineering stuff and fielded capabilities. And then when I was getting out of the Air Force, I really had a hard time thinking about what it was I wanted to do when I got out of the Air Force. And so what I landed on was I wanted to take all of the great leadership lessons, the team building things, the things I learned about building teams and taking them all over the world to do those cool things. And I wanted to bring that knowledge out to companies and business owners.
Huh. I have a lot of questions.
Hmm.
Questions that you probably won't be able to answer, but what was one of the biggest aha moments in your life during those 20 years in the Air Force?
Oh, that is a hard question. There were a lot of aha moments. I remember, one of the biggest things for me was I was always very much a gas pedal down, like let's go charge at a problem hard kind of guy, and I still kind of am in some ways. But when I was a director of operations for a squadron in Colorado, director of operations is like the second in command of a squadron in the Air Force. We had a new squadron commander come in, so I started with one squadron commander. He was around for about 4 or 5 months, and a new squadron commander came in. And that squadron commander really took me under his wing, and he taught me about just hanging back a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
like just letting things play out, watching how things play out, but more importantly, watching the dynamics of the people in a room or around a table
Interesting.
and how they interact with each other, and what you can learn about what what they say they want versus what they really want just by watching and listening. And so that was a skill I had to learn, but it was a skill that really reshaped my career after that.
Wow. The thing is that we learn so much by just being silent. So that is a great aha moment. I'm so glad you brought that up. I mean, just observing people's behavior and how they act and react. It's very interesting, isn't it?
It is, and it's really hard to observe other people when you are out kind of in front. Like, it's great to be a leader and be out and be in
Yeah,
charge, but is all and there are times for that, but it's very hard to observe people and observe the dynamics between people when you're out leading from the front. So that was a really valuable lesson for me.
and how has that helped you in your current mentoring or coaching career?
It has certainly helped me recognize that when I'm working with a client, or when I'm working with a group, or even when I'm like pitching business and trying to make that sale, I need to sit back and listen and watch, and not just be pitching what I want to pitch, but instead to be looking and watching their reactions to the things I'm saying, and seeing if I'm really clicking and connecting with what they want, what they're after. If I'm meeting their needs, and maybe even if I'm meeting a need they don't know they have yet, solving a problem they don't know they have yet.
Interesting. So building rapport and becoming a great listener has really helped you elevate your career in many levels.
Yeah, it's like I said, it was something that the boss told me, hey, I I need you to work on sitting back and just watching. Don't say anything when we go into this meeting, and then when we're done, let's talk about what you think went on here.
It's often said that the smartest people in the room are the quieter ones.
They usually are, in a lot of cases. That's why it's important as a leader, when you are leading a team, when you are the one who is out in front leading the way, to make sure you're checking in with those much quieter folks. They usually have thought through the problem a little more because they haven't been talking like the rest of us are.
Right.
They haven't been trying to solve the problem out loud. And they usually have insight and knowledge that maybe the rest of us haven't heard because we've been so busy talking. So it's really important on any team to make sure, as the leader, whether you do it publicly or do it privately, you get input from the quieter people.
Nice. I have so many questions to ask you, so just hang on for a second.
Okay.
Before we jump into your career of what you're doing now, I'd like
Hmm.
to know what part of the world was your favorite?
Oh, there there were a lot of parts of the world I got to go to. There were a lot of parts I didn't get to see. I never made it to Africa. I actually
Hmm.
never made it, other than the airport in Tokyo, I never made it to Japan, never made it over to Korea. Um, but, I spent some time in Iraq. I don't recommend it right now. Maybe in 20 years, I'd like to go back and see how things have developed. Middle East, there's it's tough over there. So,
Yeah.
but I got to go to Australia. I got to go to Hawaii. I got to go Germany. I got to go to England. I got to go to Italy. I got to go to a lot of places in Europe, and a lot of those were super quick trips, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes you're just flying in, doing a meeting, spending the night, and flying back out. But
Right. Did it humble you in some way?
it did. It's one. There are so many lessons to be learned by traveling around the world.
Yeah,
One of the lessons I learned, even traveling in Europe, we have things very easy in America. We have a lot of
we do.
prosperity here. We have a lot of advantages here. And even if you go over to Europe, it's not exactly the same. Europe is very much like the United States in a lot of ways,
Hmm.
but also very different in a lot of ways. And the further you travel afield from the United States to Europe
Hmm.
and to Asia, and then as you get into things like the Middle East and into places like Africa, you start to see that the way we view the world isn't how everyone views the world, and we come at viewing the world from a place of prosperity and having relatively easy lives. I remember when I was in Iraq, I was there in 2012, so it was after our big drawdown. So there were only about 250 Americans in uniform
Hmm.
still in Iraq, but all of the barricades and T-walls and checkpoints and all that, we had turned all of that over to the Iraqi military, but that was all still up.
Hmm.
And people were living kind of in this the military is still around running things kind of mode, and that's a very different way of
Hmm.
living than we live in the United States right now. And what was really cool to watch in the 6 months I was in Iraq, the Iraqis had actually started to pull down some of those barricades
Oh,
and rebuild, and civilian life started to become something like what was more normal before the 1990s in Iraq.
yeah. It's humbling to see how much freedom we have when you go to other countries and you realize that they really don't. Um, I'm interested to know. Um, so you went from 20 years in the military to then your career here in as a mentor
Mm-hmm.
coach. How did you take all those lessons that you've learned and then just kind of just created your own mentoring? That did that help, or I mean, I'm assuming it did because you've had a ton of experience from the military and the discipline, the way they do certain things, they create leaders and certain things. Tell me about that. How?
Yeah, focus, discipline, persistence, all of those things we learned in the military were really helpful. And I really needed them because while I knew all of the leadership pieces, all of the how to build a team pieces, what you don't get in the military, you don't typically get a lot of marketing experience, a lot of sales experience. And that was those were brand new skills that I needed to learn coming out of the military is how to if someone called me and said, "Hey, I want you to do something," I was ready for that. I knew all the things to say, I knew all the things to do. But going out there and reaching out and building those relationships for the first time,
Mhm.
and not in a "here I am, buy from me" kind of way, but in a let's get to know each other and let's see what develops kind of way, right? It's that's where focus, like military style focus and discipline and persistence and drive, don't always help you,
Right.
because out in the civilian world, it's especially in business and in business to business relationships,
Yeah.
there needs to be a much longer dating time as people get to know
Right.
you, what your capabilities are, and if you're going to be a good fit for them.
I think especially now that there's a lot of freedom with technology and social media and the internet, a lot of investors are starting to build their own business and realize that um, it's not necessarily the structure that was there back before, like in the 90s, early 2000s. There's a lot more freedom in entrepreneurship. So I think it's developing a little bit different as we go through the years. Um, the reason I'm bringing that up is because I have two kids in the military, and so I know the discipline behind the military. But then again, being almost 20 years as an entrepreneur myself, I remember back when I first started was like the 4 a.m.er club, the
Hmm.
5 a.m. club. Let's go to the gym at 4 o'clock in the morning
Hmm.
and start our day and everything. And I did all the things, and I read all the books, and I did all of that. But then I realized that um, you really have to be grounded and connected along with discipline, and kind of just um, live life a little bit more meaningful. Not necessarily does the same thing that worked for that person could work for this other person, because our bodies are different. Our bodies are different. Our intellectual capabilities are different. The way we learn things are also different. So it's nice that you said, let's get to know my client and date him and see if it's a great fit, and if this works for him or not. Because a lot of people are different. So um, I think it's shifting, don't you think? The way that we used to do things, of like hard work, discipline, da 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 da. I think that's important, but I think it means a different thing for people.
I think hard work and discipline are always going to be important for entrepreneurs. I
Yeah.
think what has shifted, and this was actually an easy adaptation for me, because when I was in the military, I did a lot of things where it was doing activities over
Yeah.
the night shift, or we might be on night shift for 2 or 3 nights, midnight shift, and then we might be on morning shift for 2 or 3 days, then swing shift in the afternoons, and or it might just be a crazy schedule of, depending on what was going
Yeah.
on, we were doing stuff starting at midnight, and then we might be back at 2 in the afternoon, and then we might be in at 9 in the morning.
Hmm.
And so discipline and focus and hard work are always important
Yes.
skills. It, like you said, it's not about doing what you read in the book and doing exactly what, if they say do it at 5 a.m.,
Yeah.
right? You don't need to do it at 5 a.m. You need to develop the self-discipline to go
Yeah.
do it at the time it makes sense for you. Right now, I'm very much in a mode, when I hit the afternoon, when I hit about 1:30 or 2 in the afternoon, my brain kind of goes to mush. I'm not
Yeah.
very useful working on the computer. I'm not very useful in meetings. So that's when I go to the gym.
Hmm.
That's when I do those kinds of things, from about 1:32 in the afternoon to about 5 in the afternoon.
Exactly.
I don't do anything that requires a lot of mental concentration or focus or attention to detail, because that's what works for me. Now, that the discipline is, I do that every day, right?
Yes.
And some days are different. Sometimes I have to take a meeting at 2 in the afternoon, and that's
Right.
okay. But I do all of my very, like, the first hour of every day is like, what's the most important thing that's got to get done today that I didn't get done yesterday? And then from like 9 in the morning till like lunchtime, that's when I try to do meetings. And then I get my block of time where my brain is not very productive,
Hmm.
and then do that, have dinner, and then get back to doing things. And either I'm back to doing things like working on a presentation, working on curriculum for a course, or if I don't have anything like that I've got to do, I'm working on, I'm just doing like personal professional development reading. That's the time. The evening with a cup of coffee is the time I do that. So the discipline is there because it's a routine. It's got the flexibility to adapt,
Hmm.
but I'm like, don't do it. Don't do what I do and go to the gym when I go when it makes sense to you. Just make sure you
Yeah.
go, right.
I think you said something very important. You said, I notice that my body kind of shuts down, and that's the time where I take advantage, which means that you listen to your body, you're aware, and you're very, in tune with what your body needs at that moment. Because the worst thing you want to do is, when you're checked out in your mind, is to go write a whole curriculum.
Right. Yeah. I think, we the to go back to what you were saying, how
Uh-huh.
things have shifted. In the 90s, when I was first coming into the workforce, when I was leaving college and first coming into the workforce, before 9/11, before we were deploying all the time in the Air Force, we thought about things in terms of the workday, right? We thought about things, and in the business world too, we thought about
Yes,
things in terms of weekdays and weekends, and work days and off work hours, right?
exactly.
And then the world kind of became a little more fast paced in the 2000s, and then it started to be do more, do more, do more, but everyone started trying to do things in that work day, and then it would bleed over into the evenings and bleed over into the weekends, right? I look at the world, I look at time as, every day I have a 24-hour span.
Right.
So if I've got 12 hours of things in a 24-hour span, including sleeping and eating and all those things, How do I fit them in? Where does it make sense to fit them in, right? From my Air Force days, sometimes I'm sleeping for 3 hours and I'm going to do something for a few hours and I'm sleeping for 3 hours again. Now that's not the best for everybody. I don't necessarily recommend you do that, but with discipline, you've got to have the flexibility to live inside a 24-hour day instead of trying to live inside an 8-hour workday or a 10-hour workday. Live inside 24 hours, work inside 24 hours, and figure out what those best hours are to do
Yeah.
that work.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was trying to say. The world has changed drastically. There's a lot of entrepreneurs that travel a lot for work, and so they just have to adjust their discipline differently for their type of lifestyle. There's also people with, certain ailments and so on, so they have to, schedule the time for them to rest and the time for them to work out and self-care and so on. And so it's not, what I'm trying to say, it's not as if it just an all fit one box
Mm-hmm.
for every single person. So the thing about you is that you create a mentoring program and a
Mm-hmm.
coaching program just for them. So, which is perfect.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as leaders, it's really important as we think about this 24-hour time scale. It's really important to remember that if we have people working for us,
Hmm.
they are people too, right?
Right.
I've worked for leaders in the Air Force, and it was different kind of before the BlackBerry and smartphone days, where they'd be in the office or working from home, sending emails at like 2 in the morning, and then you'd come in at like 7 in the morning. You'd have a bunch of emails you had to deal with, and that was okay. But now that we're all electronically tethered to work,
Hmm.
as leaders, we have to remember if we send an email at 11 at night, people are going to respond to that unless we tell them you don't have to respond to this until the morning. This is just so it's in your inbox now, right?
Right.
And now sometimes there really are emergencies and we need people to respond. I mean, I think a phone call would be more appropriate than email in that situation, right?
Right.
But that's something we need to remember as leaders. If we don't want people on our team to drop what they're doing and respond to us immediately, maybe we should wait to send that email till the next morning instead of at 11 at night or 2 in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah. And so tell me, if I was an entrepreneur, because I work with 100% of my clients are all business owners
Mm-hmm.
and entrepreneurs. Um, so if I was doing a startup and you're working with me,
Mm-hmm.
tell me how you would start.
If you were working with a startup, the first thing I would do is I would ask you about who your client is, what's your product market fit, what is the problem you solve for them. And whether you're doing a tech startup, whether you're doing a small business, that's
Mhm.
always what you need to be asking yourself in a business is what is the problem you're solving, or what I like to say, what is the good you do in the world, right? What do you provide to the world to make the world a better place? That's the
Right.
first thing you need to start in any kind of business.
And then what's the second step?
And then the second step is how do you solve that problem for them? What
Okay.
are the ways you solve that problem for them? A lot of people do this backwards. You know this. You've been an entrepreneur for a long time too.
Yes.
A lot of people know what they do and what they're good at, and they try to shoehorn that into there's some problem that people have.
Yeah. The problem with me is that I'm an empath by nature. So whenever I see one of my clients super excited about opening their business and getting a location, I'm
Mm-hmm.
already excited for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm driven by that excitement that they have themselves. And so I think it's important to ground them and say, okay, do you have a business plan? What does your business plan look like? What is your clientele?
Mm-hmm.
What area of Las Vegas or Henderson or North Las Vegas are you looking into? I mean, there's so many questions to be asked, and sometimes they do need a mentor or someone to kind of ground them and sit them through a business plan that makes sense for them, so that they could have a solid foundation to start on.
Yeah, and we want to harness that excitement that they
Yeah.
have and that we have for them, right? And yes, a business plan is important, but a business plan isn't a plan for how you run your business. A business plan is a plan how your business makes money for
Right.
you and your investors, right? So one of the things we do while entrepreneurs are new and they're in that first idea stage, one, we ask them a lot of questions about the problem. We keep their energy focused on the problem, not on the solution. And then we tell them, go talk to 100 people. Just go talk to 100 people.
Mhm.
Ask them if they've got this problem, and then tell them about your solution to the problem and see how they respond to that. And if you have a good solution to a problem that people have, inevitably, a few of them will say, I would buy that right. How do I buy this? How do I buy this right now? And then you have to say, well,
Mhm.
it's not ready yet. But you're going to learn things, right? People are going to say, I don't have that problem, but here's a problem I do have. And that will teach you something, right?
Mhm.
They're going to say, I have that problem, but what you're offering me, I've tried before, it doesn't work. And then you can ask some more questions. What's great about being here in Las Vegas is we have this thing called the Las Vegas Strip, where if you want to go talk to 100 people, you can get that done in like 2 hours,
Yeah.
right? All you've got to do is hang out on Las Vegas Boulevard and talk to people.
You don't even have to do that. You could just hit up the phone or the internet. I'm sorry, I'm like an old person. I still talk about phones. You could just look at the internet. There's networking events.
Mm-hmm.
You go sit at, one of the local restaurants that's popular. There's a ton of them. And they will have people there already having networking events. So it's just a matter of just getting out there and just meeting people.
Yeah. The important thing is you go and you ask those 100 people.
Yeah.
You don't settle on what it is you sell until you've asked those 100 people and get all that feedback and then
Mhm.
refine and you may ask 100 people and go, I've got it exactly right. I
Yeah.
figured it out. So, and then you go and you sell that. Like I said, if people are already telling you in those 100 people, how do I buy it?
Mhm.
You're doing something right.
So you think anyone could really just be a successful business being antisocial?
I think anyone can be a successful business owner or a successful entrepreneur. I think you have to be willing to put the work in.
Yeah,
And I think you have to be willing to make changes to yourself,
right.
right? So being antisocial, you may be the brains behind the operation, creating the product, creating the
Yeah.
service. You probably need a co-founder who's going to go out and talk to those 100 people.
The reason why I'm bringing that up is that no one's going to be as excited about your product than yourself. And I'm antisocial. Can
Mm-hmm.
you tell? But however, you have to develop, like you said, you have to develop that side of
Mm-hmm.
you and you have to get out of your comfort zone in order to elevate your business because otherwise, no one's ever going to be as excited as you. No one's ever going to give the same effort to your company and to your product as yourself. So if something is scaring you or if your comfort zone is to just, stay back and let someone else do it, you're doing your service, your product a disservice because you're not giving as much as you could.
And if something's scaring you, you're probably on the right track for doing something great and
Yeah.
important. You're if you've got to make changes in your life to accomplish something, then it's probably a really good thing for yourself and the world in general. So
Yeah. The only people that are set back are the ones that are not willing to change
yeah,
continuously.
and it's okay if you start down an entrepreneurial path and you go, you know what, this is not for me.
Hmm.
That's okay. It's all right. Maybe it's not for you today, and maybe in a few years. But that's the thing about being an entrepreneur is you have to be obsessed with what it is you do. It has to be on the top of your mind all the time because no one is going to care about it more than you do, and you've got to be willing to do what it takes to move the ball forward on it.
So we've talked about your past, your great career in the military. We talked about your passion for helping people and entrepreneurs. Um, Tell me a little bit more about what's next for you.
What's next? Well, in the last couple of years, I have started a podcast as well. So I do that. I bring people on. We talk to people who are business owners, leaders in the community, community builders, all kinds of folks. Leadership is something that we are all engaged in
Congrats.
some way or another.
Yeah.
So we've been doing that for almost 2 years now, and we've had some great episodes. We've moved it up to where we do an interview every week, and I do some educational content every week, and so that is taking up a lot of my time, and I'm leaning into that. I'm really enjoying doing a podcast, having the guests in, talking to them, telling their stories. So I'm leaning into that, and then I'm also created an online product that I'm putting together the final touches on, and an in person what we call Leadership Academy. It's
Wow.
like a pre-built program. A lot of what
Hmm.
we've done in the past is like half-day workshops, day-long workshops. What we've done is we've created a really comprehensive leadership academy where we can go work with a company for a few months,
Hmm.
come in person once a month, and then do virtual coaching with the people in the class on the
Wow.
weeks that we aren't there.
Are you looking to travel, or is this just in Las Vegas?
Las Vegas, I'll travel anywhere. I mean, I love Las Vegas. I love living here, and
Yeah,
there's a lot of great companies to work with here. But I would love to do something with companies in Nashville. I would love to do something with companies in Austin, Texas.
amazing. And so, can you tell us where to find you for that?
Yeah, you can find all of this stuff at the website www.leducleadership.com. We are LeDuc Leadership on all of the socials. So either search for LeDuc Leadership, LEDuc Leadership, or Jason LeDuc Leadership Consultants. Find us there on YouTube. You can see all of the Leaders Mindset episodes and the other episodes we put out there. So
One last question. This is what I asked to almost every single one of my guests. What is your favorite thing about humankind?
my favorite thing about humankind is our capacity to achieve just about anything.
Amen to that.
We have we have come so far as a species and we have so much further to go. Human beings are capable of so much if they recognize, if I push myself a little harder, I can achieve just a little more. And by achieving just a little
Yeah,
more and just a little more and just a little more and working together, we can achieve things that are much bigger than ourselves.
absolutely. I'm such a nerd about exactly that. I'm into the CIA Robert Monroe documents that
Mm-hmm.
have been released. And I'm just mind blown by the amazing things our scientists are doing. It's kind of eerie and scary at the same time, but it's exciting to find out that all the science behind everything, all of our capabilities, not just physically, but also mentally.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty amazing. I think you're absolutely right on that.
Yeah, then we have a lot further to go.
A lot further to go. Thank you so much, guys. This is Jason LeDuc. And where can we find you again one more time?
Yeah, the website is leducleadership.com, www.leducleadership.com. Just search for Jason LeDuc Leadership Consultants. It's LeDuc Leadership, LEDuc Leadership on all the socials. And on the socials, you can also search for Jason LeDuc Leadership Consultants. And look for the Leaders Mindset podcast on YouTube.
Anything else?
No, that's great. Thank you for having me
Thank you so
today.
much. Yay!